Hey folks, it's Matt once again. Welcome back to another Jean-Claude Van Damme movie review. And this is of a direct-to-video film directed by Simon Fellows, who also went on to direct the Van Damme film Until Death, and that is Second in Command. This is a 2006 film. That's what the back looks like. Now, Second in Command, at the end of the day, I would say it's an okay film. I liked it okay. I liked it as a time waster. Not one of his best. Not even one of his best direct-to-video films, but I would definitely say I enjoy this more than Derailed or The Hardcore. Those I thought were pretty terrible and boring. And I can understand why people would say this is boring, but yeah, it's an okay film. It does have problems, though. But I can watch it as a time waster because I like the idea. The idea, in a nutshell, it's Van Damme as a Navy SEAL who is sent to this Eastern European nation. I think it's Moldavia. Pretty much to be a security attaché at the U.S. Embassy. Because they've put a new president of the nation to be, he's more democratic. You have some insurgents and people who like the old dictator who want the guy out of there. There's a bit of rioting. Without the president's say-so, some people in the crowd are killed, some of the insurgents. The bad guys get even more pissed off and they want the guy out there to die. And Van Damme, who becomes second in command, like the title, he pretty much has to go in, get that guy, bring him back, and then tell the bad guys, hey, he's at the embassy now, he's under our protection, and it becomes a siege movie. A siege movie in the vein of The Alamo, Assault on Precinct 13, or a Dolph Lundgren direct-to-video film called The Defender. Now, I was never a big fan of The Alamo, but it's definitely not Assault on Precinct 13, and it's not even The Defender. I would say The Defender is a better movie, because The Defender, I think that was going to be directed by someone, but maybe Sidney Furie, but then Dolph Lundgren sort of got the job. I could be wrong, but I thought Dolph Lundgren did a good job directing that film, because the action scenes were plentiful and went at a pretty good pace, and I thought the action scenes were handled very well. There's a lot of shootouts, and it wasn't boring. And yes, even Jerry Springer as the president wasn't that horrible. It sounds horrible, but it wasn't as horrible as it sounds. So The Defender, I think, is a fun Dolph Lundgren film. This, I wish, was as good as The Defender. And Van Damme's not the problem. Van Damme's not the problem. I think the problem is Simon Fellows. I think he did a good job with Until Death because he's not the best action director, but I think that script at least had Van Damme being able to do more. He definitely did more physical stuff in that film than this, and he is absolutely had more to do acting-wise. Playing a cop who's addicted to, he has a heroin addiction, and then he gets shot in the head, almost dies, goes into a coma, wakes up, wants to redeem himself. There's not much for Van Damme to do in this film. He is the star of the film, but at the same time, he doesn't have much to do. And I think because the director, I don't know if you want to blame the script or you want to blame the director. Because the script isn't much, but the directing, the action is more that documentary style, so it gets shaky, and some editing that is not the best, could have been better. And also, Van Damme doesn't do a lot of martial arts. There's only 2 or 3 brief times where Van Damme uses martial arts. And you just say the same for Until Death, but even the gunfights were more to them. I mean, you definitely saw more of a practical bullet squibs. Here you don't see much of that. I mean, it's rated R, but at times it almost seems like some of that was cut back. That's why I say it's an okay time waster, because it's a short film. It's only, without the end credits, it's only an hour and 20-some minutes. And I like the idea of Van Damme in a siege film. There's some good practical explosions, especially in the third act. And I like the idea of Van Damme being in a siege type of movie, but it could have been a lot better. I think with a different director. And giving Van Damme a bit more to do physical-wise. Give him some more fights. Give him some more... Give him the amount of shooting that you gave Gerard Butler in Olympus Has Fallen. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. Like I said, Van Damme's character goes there. First thing he does, goes to this hotel, and he meets up with this reporter, this female reporter who he knew in the past. But then some reporters in the lobby, some other reporters, they get killed. Van Damme comes down and pretty much just headbutts the guy and hits the guy. Headbutts him and hits him in the face. I mean, there's not much to it. And even when the reporters get shot, you don't see a lot of blood, which I don't understand. You don't, especially when you watch Until Death, you saw bloody practical squibs. I don't know. And you have people crowding, ready for a riot, and this mob's coming through, and insurgents, and Van Damme gets to the guy, like I said, the president of that nation. Gets a decoy out there, and then Van Damme drives the car with the president of that nation, gets hit, and he has some nice practical stuff. Like when the car gets hit, it's practical. They get back, an RPG hits the gate of the embassy, and it blows a hole in it. Insurgents try to get in, they get pushed back. The baddies want Van Damme to release this president guy for the crimes of killing innocent people on orders, even though he didn't give the order, and they're really not that innocent anyway. The bad guys have these hostages, including that female reporter, and pretty much they set up a rescue. And at first Van Damme doesn't do much, because a lot of the shooting, it's the other soldiers that are under his command. So it's trying to be, I don't know what it's trying to be, Black Hawk Down, Green Zone, whatever you want to say, that shaky cam type stuff. Documentary feel, I should say, that documentary style, which is tiring to watch in movie after movie. Didn't need to be that way. And Van Damme doesn't do much during that rescue. But then a guy gets left behind, and he goes to rescue the guy, and he shoots a couple, and then there's this one guy, which I thought this was kind of cool. He grabs the guy by the nuts, hits him in the head, then kicks the guy in the nuts, and then gouges the guy. The bad guy. One of the bad guys. So again, grabs him by the nuts, hits him in the head, kicks him in the nuts, and then gouges his eyes. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And then Van Damme rescues the guy. It's not as bloody as I'm making it sound like when I say gouge, but you get the idea. And then one thing leads to another. He's just kicked out of not being in command. Just technically he's not in command. Just the guy who had given it, he's been killed in one of that RPG I mentioned. And then this sort of the asshole of the group says, no, we need to escape during the night. And Van Damme says, no, that's a bad mistake. They don't listen to Van Damme. So of course they go and they get to this bus while Van Damme's staying behind watching the cameras. And of course the bus is rigged and it gets blown up. I did nice practical explosions. I did idea of that. You get quite a few practical explosions. You don't have too much CGI. A little handful, which I'll get to, but not too much, which I at least appreciate that. I would rather watch this than any of Seagal's crappy direct-to-video stuff. Because at least Van Damme is not bad in the film, and he's not using tons of stunt doubles, fight doubles in this one. And again, it's a simple siege movie. So again, I like the idea of Van Damme being in that. But I would like to see that idea put into a better Van Damme movie. With a bigger budget. Hell, have Van Damme star in Olympus Has Fallen or something to that effect. Although Gerard Butler did a good job in that film. But I like to see Van Damme in that kind of big budget film. Or you say, what about Sudden Death? Well, Sudden Death, I liked, but the body doubles were noticeable. At least to me, during the fights, and that hurts the film for me. But anyway, getting back to this. I don't think Van Damme's bad. There's this asshole trying to fuck with him still while the people are escaping back through the tunnels, back to the embassy. And there's a few people left there. Van Damme wants to go after him. The asshole tries to talk, and Van Damme slams him into the wall and says, "We're talking about lives here." And he goes through, and he pretends to be dead next to the female reporter, and then he pretty much get over here, and he fires, and he gets the two groups to fire and shoot each other. And he gets the girl reporter out there, back into the embassy, and finds out that she, unbeknownst to her, had a listening device. I didn't mind the guy who played the gunny. Was it Raz Adoti? I've seen him in a few films. I remember he was Duke in Doom, the 2005 movie. I believe he was in Resident Evil Apocalypse. And he's been in a few films. I think he's also in the Hardcore with Van Damme, which, again, I thought this was a better movie than that, but he's not bad. Yeah, I like Van Damme's line, "Give him hell, Gunny." That's an order. And the baddies use this truck to blow up the gate, and you have firefights. The good guys have put these bombs with nails and stuff, and it blows up, and getting good practical explosion. At least this part wasn't that shaky and confusing, at least to me. There were some nice wide shots of the explosions. Wasn't cut every millisecond, I appreciate that. Although, if you're only have bombs with nails, you should have some up close of like someone's face covered with nails, or shoulda, coulda, woulda. At least that's what I would have done. But the militia has come in, and they think, "Oh, we're saved," but no, they're with the bad guys, and they firefight, go back to the embassy. Now, some of the little bits of CGI, there's one where when Van Damme and the girl got through the tunnel, he told Gunny to blow it up. So the guy throws a grenade. You see a little bit of CGI of the tunnel blowing up. And then some of the helicopters are CG, so they didn't look too great. And the helicopters are their support that have finally come in at the last minute. And there's a little firefight in the embassy, but it's not much. You see Van Damme firing like this, but he could be shooting in the fucking air for all I know. You see maybe one or two people fall down, but I barely even saw the bullet hits. They could have fainted from, "Oh my god, Van Damme shoot at me, I'm gonna faint." It could have just been that. So that's the disappointing part. That's the parts that I think could have been a lot better. I think if you had more... Hell, the guy who directed Wake of Death, or some other more established action director. Hell, have Dolph Lundgren direct and Van Damme star. That would have been interesting. Just Dolph Lundgren direct a film, Van Damme star in it. I think Dolph Lundgren would have done a better job. But, hell, watch The Russian Specialist. That's another good one. Also known as The Mechanic. The Good Mechanic. But I do like the fact, okay, CGI helicopters, but when they fire and they blow the shit out of all this militia that's the bad guys, practical explosions. The filmmakers literally took this block and blow the shit out, blowing up this truck, blowing up that truck, all practical explosions. And I appreciate that, because I'm shocked that that stuff wasn't CG. Because if it was an Asylum film, that all would be CG. But I like the fact that this is practical explosion, this is practical explosion, that's practical explosion. Hell, when the bad guys blew up the door, that was a practical explosion. I mean, the embassy really does get fucked up. This gets blown up, that part gets blown up, at least from that we see on the outside. So I do appreciate the practical explosion usage. Which is sad that I have to be thankful for that, but I'm going to give credit where credit's due. Van Damme gets in this little fight with the bad guy, where he finally did some actual martial arts with Van Damme, but it's not much. A roundhouse kick here, one or two kicks here. One of the guys gets the knife to Van Damme, and they go a little bit back and forth. I mean, nothing like the fight with the knife in Time Cop, which was filmed better, because here again is a little bit too shaky for my taste. Van Damme hits the guy with the knife in the leg, and then I like the idea that he just thrusts the knife into the back of the neck of the bad guy. Although I wish it would have been gorier, but that's my preference. And everything's safe, and I do like the last shot where Van Damme and the girl goes out and the camera pulls back, and it shows like all the destruction of the militia. So they really had carte blanche on this block that they rented or whatever just to blow the shit out of it. But it's an okay time waster because, I know I'm repeating myself, I don't mind Van Damme in the film. I like the siege idea. I like those kind of movies. Not every time, but I just like to see Van Damme in that kind of movie. I like to see that done in a bigger budget or a better film. The acting wasn't too shabby. I mean, Razzadotti as Gunny was fine. The other actors, I can't think of any that were piss poor. Practical explosions, you do have some firefights, but again, the action is not handled as great as it could be. And I would definitely say, without a doubt, absolutely surefire, that The Defender with Dolph Lundgren is a much better siege movie, and that's a direct-to-video film, than this. Because that film is better directed, and better usage of the editing, and there's more excitement in the firefights. The firefights are not the most exciting firefights. Again, Simon Fellows, he's not that much of an action director. Again, Until Death worked because it was a more interesting story and character for Van Damme in his performance. But I know I'm really blasting the film, but again, it didn't piss me off. I would rather watch this than any of Seagal's recent films. And I can watch it as an okay time waster. Could have been better, would like to have been better, but I can watch it, flip it on, and be alright with it. I don't think it's that awful. Second in command. I can watch it as a time waster. Definitely not as good as, say, The Order or Wake of Death, though. But, again, definitely better than Derailed or The Hardcore. But either way, thanks for watching, take care, and we'll see another Jean-Claude Van Damme movie review later.